So it's really starting to look like this could be Kelsey Mitchell's final season with the Indiana Fever. The contract situation with Aaliyah Boston makes things extremely complicated when it comes to keeping Mitchell beyond this year. And I know some people are saying, oh, the Lexi Hull deal doesn't mean Kelsey's gone. But honestly, it kind of does. When you look at the numbers, you've got Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, and Monique Billings all under contract. And together they're making around $3.2 million next season. That's a huge chunk already. Even if we imagine a scenario where the salary cap jumps up to $8 million, which is very optimistic, they're still taking up roughly 40% of the cap. And that's the problem. If nearly 40% of your cap is tied up in just 3 players, there's just no realistic way to offer Kelsey Mitchell a max contract. And let's be real, Mitchell is not the type of player who's going to take a pay cut. That's just not who she is. If she were open to taking less money, the Fever would have already locked her into a multi-year deal. Something like $1.2 million per year over multiple seasons would have made a lot of sense for the team long term. But they didn't do that, and that tells you a lot. Because if the Fever truly saw Kelsey Mitchell as a long-term core piece, they wouldn't have committed such a massive percentage of the salary cap to Aaliyah Boston for the next several years. This is clearly a shift in direction. The franchise is building around Boston, and obviously Caitlin Clark is a central part of that future as well. But here's where it gets tricky. Caitlin Clark is going to be due a massive contract soon too. If she wins MVP, she could be looking at around $1.7 million next season. Even without MVP, she's still in line for roughly $1.5 million. Now, let's say she even takes a $500,000 pay cut. That still doesn't solve the problem. Because once you combine her salary with Boston, Hull, and Billings, you're already pushing the limits of the cap. At that point, keeping Kelsey Mitchell would mean filling out the rest of the roster with minimum contracts only. And this is not a team that thrives on bargain hunting. To make it work, you'd have to sacrifice all depth. You might have to let young talent like Raven Johnson walk. You'd probably have to trade away future first-round picks just to manage salary flexibility. You'd be operating with zero margin for error. And then in free agency, forget about signing quality role players like Misha Hines-Allen. You'd be stuck chasing minimum deals across the board. That's just not sustainable. So even if the Fever want to keep Kelsey Mitchell, everything about their current financial structure suggests they're moving on. Not necessarily because they don't value her, but because they've already committed elsewhere. And again, Mitchell isn't taking less money to stay. History shows that. Last season, she didn't take a discount even when it could have helped the team add more depth. So expecting her to suddenly accept a pay cut now? That's unrealistic. And honestly, why should she? If she can get paid more and join a team with a better shot at winning, that's the logical move. There's no real incentive for her to stay in Indiana under those conditions. Now, could the Fever have used her as a trade asset earlier? Maybe. That's definitely an argument. But it's also possible she was only interested in certain types of deals, like percentage of cap contracts, similar to what stars like Breanna Stewart or Sabrina Ionescu have. Even in the best-case scenario, say Boston took 17% of the cap instead of 20%, you'd still run into issues. Because to keep Boston, Clark, and Mitchell together, you'd basically need Caitlin Clark to take a significantly reduced salary long-term. And we're not talking about a small cut. We're talking about her potentially earning close to the minimum compared to her market value. That's a huge ask. When you compare this to teams like the New York Liberty, the difference becomes obvious. Their stars are structured in a way that allows flexibility. Players like Jonquel Jones are not maxing out the cap, and most of their roster is built on minimum deals that fit around their core. The Fever don't have that same balance right now. Outside of a few minimum players, most of their cap is already tied up, which makes it even harder to build a complete roster while also keeping a player like Kelsey Mitchell. So yeah, as tough as it is, this is starting to feel inevitable. All signs point to Kelsey Mitchell not being on the Indiana Fever roster a year from now.